Welcome back to the innovation stage, and welcome if it's your first time here. My name is Peter Hoidu. I'm a public speaking trainer, and I am the MC for this stage. The topic of the roundtable, leadership versus expertise, the line manager's dilemma. And since it's three speakers, we agreed on the shortest intro so far today. Please welcome on stage Meffy, engineering director at Bitrise, Fancy, freelance IT culture and communications consultant, and Kish Potsok, engineering manager at Hopin. Round of applause, please.
Thank you
so much.
Hello, everyone. I am Fancy, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to our first ever online podcast recording that is also streamed and that is in English. So we are happy to be here with you. Just to get in space for a little bit, please raise your hand if you're an engineering manager at a company or freelance engineering manager. Awesome. Thank you so much. Also, a little bit of market search on my end. Tell me if you have heard about our podcast before. Okay, a few more people. Okay, awesome. Thank you for being here with us. First, let me introduce the podcast. This is Leadership Anonymous, or Anonim Vezető Klubja in Hungarian. It is basically a podcast that is three professionals from the IT industry. We like to make it very conversational and just as if you were having a couple of beers with a friend, but also recorded and put out in the internet. And we are at the Compass Tech Summit. We thank the sponsors and the organizers for inviting us. We are happy to be here. And all the show hosts are experienced technology leaders in the IT industry. But today, this is a first on so many levels for us. So please bear with us as we get the gears going. First, before we start with the topic, please let us introduce ourselves. Kish Potsok, please.
Yeah, sure. I hope you can hear me. Please nudge a bit. Great, because it's kind of strange for us, but thank you so much.
We have no clue whether you hear us right now.
We actually can't hear that, but that's great. I say thank you so much. So my name is David Schneiderfer, also known as Kish Potsok. I'm an engineering manager at Hopin currently, but originally I worked for Index, Ustream, IBM, Bitrise, and now I'm leading a platform team, which has like a great responsibility to developer experience at StreamYard. So that's me in a supernatural, but professionally. But personally, I'm father of one, and I hope he can listen. He is listening to me right now. So I'm just saying and waving for my kiddo. So that's about me. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Meffy.
Hi everyone, my name is Meffy. My real name is Gabor, but everyone calls me Meffy, which is going way back in history, and it's just stuck on me. I'm working as an engineering director at Bitrise. Before that, I was working at a Hungarian real estate listing portal. If you're Hungarian, probably know the company. If you're not, then probably won't. I had a very usual track in this industry. I started as a software engineer. I became a tech lead. After the tech lead, I switched to an engineering management role. And after quite some time, I was able to be a VP of engineering at my previous company. So I have kind of like a mixed bag of experience in terms of professional stuff. And right now I'm working at Bitrise, and I'm the third voice in the podcast.
Thank you. And I am Karolina Tóth. I have Fancy as my nickname for the Leadership Anonymous podcast. And also I use it out there in the real world. I am a cognitive scientist by trade, and I also have been working in the IT industry in Hungary for over 8 years. That dates me a little bit, but we are gonna let that go. I am currently working as a freelance IT communications and culture consultant. Those names actually make it more acceptable to work on process improvement and such, and culture is like this awesome thing. And also I am host of the Level Up Engineering podcast, where I interview IT leaders from all around the world bi-weekly. And I think that's about me. So today we have a very exciting topic that is also like somewhat of a hot topic in the IT industry. Does a line manager need technical experience, and how much experience does the line manager need? And we're gonna talk about it and see if we can give you the definite answer, like a very marketing heavy, like the definite answer to how much technological knowledge you need. So, if you don't know the podcast, we usually rotate the show host post between the three of us. So today I am the show host. And we also start our episodes with a little bit of story time. Here, I would like to ask you guys if you have any experience with a good line manager who knew nothing of the subject of technology, or if you have the opposite experience in your lifetimes. Who wants to start?
Yeah, I'm happy to do so. So I brought you a story. I mean, I think it's kind of usual story, but we'll see. So I worked for a company. There was a very excellent engineer there, and he became a manager of that team, right? So he wanted to be a manager. He was promoted. I hate saying that it's a promotion, actually, but he promoted to be a manager. And, you know, there are two chances there, right? He became a good manager or not. So in our case, we really had like an inexperienced manager, and also we lost someone who was a very good professional front-end engineer. So it was a very, very bad change for us. It wasn't helpful for the team, and it became like a very short nightmare for the team. He wasn't that person, right? So I'm not saying... So he was an expert in the field, right? He had experience before, but it turned out he's not as good as it was on that track as a manager. So, long story short, I live with that. So it was very, very keen to, it was very bad to lose someone from a team, and having instead of that person a bad manager, and it's just, it's kind of sucks.
Not a good experience.
Yeah, no, not at all. And obviously, there is an opposite way, right? I hope you have an opposite way, and you already heard stories like that, or be familiar with one of them, but that's the story for today.
Thank you.
I have a kind of different story. A couple of years ago, I had a new VP of engineering at the company that I was working at, and he was coming from a somewhat different area. I wouldn't say far away different area, but it was a different area. Basically, at his previous titles, he was kind of like a CIO, a chief IT officer. So he had some kind of experience about what's happening, but he was never a software engineer. He wasn't written not even one line of code in his whole life. Okay, maybe one, that's okay, but never, one line in production. And I was very, very skeptical because, first of all, within a year, he was like the third, maybe fourth VP of engineer at the company. And after some time, it's getting quite boring to tell a new leader in the company, who is going to be your leader, about how the company is working, how the product is working, how the teams are working. And it was kind of like the fourth time for me. And I'm like, yeah, there's this new guy, not even coming from the same industry. It must be fun. It must be fun. And it was actually fun. And I had a complete opposite what happened, which was in my mind before that, because he was actually a very good manager, and because of that, he was able to guide the teams very well. And true, he wasn't able to, help in resolving a very specific hands-on technology issue what any of the teams had, but he was very good in figuring out how those teams should work together and how the whole engineering organization should move forward. And he made very good decisions. It was very good to work with him, and altogether the journey was good. And I think that was the first for me when I realized that, okay, it's actually true that someone can be a good manager even if they were not a software engineer before. So that's me.
Thank you. I brought you two experiences from my life. And as a coach, I am always in the favor of anyone can do whatever they set their mind to. And if they put in the work, they can become pretty great at whatever they set their mind to becoming pretty great in. In another life, I was working for quite a few tech companies within the city limits of Budapest. And at one time, I worked with a guy who was an excellent engineer. And he got promoted very high up in the company and got a lot of responsibilities about people, which he got no clarification over, like what is expected of you when you're managing these people. There wasn't really a set, definition of someone in the management. Like, for example, if you're a CTO, like what are your responsibilities? So he got stuck with the technicalities of each project he oversaw, and that meant that the teams that he was working with were also very technical, and they didn't really get a greater picture of what the projects were supposed to get to, or what they were supposed to achieve. And I think that was really a bit of a hindrance to the rest of the company. And in a different lifetime, I also worked with someone who was managing teams and had no experience in IT. So he was never a coder, he never tried coding. He just kind of got to this managerial position from a different industry. And he didn't have any appreciation for the nitty-gritty of software engineering. He didn't really have patience for software engineers and their excuses for why things might not get done. So I just brought you two experiences to kind of make the shades, when I am all about motivating people to do whatever they want, a little different when it comes to all the shades. Okay, first, after these story times, let's define what we're talking about here. I think it's very important for all of us to be on the same page. Like, what is an engineering manager? What is a line manager? What is a tech lead? And we're not going to give you definite definitions. We are going to give you an all it depends kind of answer, but maybe we will give you some pointers to make sure that you can be in a better position within your company to make some changes if it needs be. An engineering manager and a tech lead and a line manager are all leaders of some sort. And so we expect them to give feedback, to give evaluations. Maybe they are in charge of salary decisions. But usually managers are on the people side of things. That's our general understanding. And tech leads or experts are people who are technical and can code and understand the libraries that are adjacent to the project. But for our purposes, we are just going to use the umbrella term line manager for making it an easier and more compatible and digestible conversation. But is a line manager or a technical expert different from a line manager or a manager of a team? We don't know yet. But an expert is someone who is very technical, and a manager is someone who is not necessarily technical. Are they separate positions merged into one? Or is the role of an engineering manager both of these necessarily?
I'm going to start the it depends train with it depends, because I can imagine, for example, that you're working in an agency. Let's say the whole company is about 30-ish people, and maybe you have 2 software engineering teams within that agency. In that scenario, I can imagine that it's better if you're saying that someone is leading the team who is actually very hands-on, is able to lead the team in a way that can help the less experienced folks work, can make decisions on the technical side as well, but also able to go to meet with the client and all together lead the team in that way. But if you switch to a way more bigger company where you have maybe thousands of people working there, what is usually the pattern that within those companies, there are usually folks who are more invested in the technology side, and their growth path is basically to just be an expert on some field of the technology and just have as much experience as you can. And also we have the managers who are responsible on how the teams are working together, how the communication is happening, responsible for the people side, you mentioned, Fancy. And I also think that a manager can be an expert of management and leadership as well, because that's a separate topic. So I think it depends. Sometimes it's the same role, and we say, like, I don't know, a tech lead or an engineering manager or just a team lead or someone similar, and they are actually both a technology expert and both someone who can lead the team. And sometimes it starts to separate, and this is what we discussed in some of the previous episodes that usually what is a good pattern is that if you're like a senior software engineer, that it's not necessarily a good track that the next level for you is being an engineering manager. That's a side track. Being in management is kind of like a different area, but it actually might help you if you have, of course, some technological expertise, but it's not something that, the next level is to become a manager. So that's my take on that one.
So going from kind of the outskirts of our conversation, when isn't it necessary for an engineering manager to have technical knowledge? When their team is completely comprised of senior experts, if you have a team of really experienced technologists who don't necessarily need the technical leadership, then your engineering manager doesn't necessarily need to be a technical expert or doesn't need a lot of technical knowledge either. When is it necessary to have someone who is also a technical expert? Well, if you are starting a completely new project, it may be very useful to have a leader who also knows what the team is doing. And if there is no seniority within the team, I'm sure even though Agile talks to you about a lot of senior engineers, you have worked with not so senior engineers in Agile teams who really were doing the best but didn't really know what they were doing. So then it's really important to have someone with technical expertise. What would you add that is missing if you have a need for technicality in engineering management?
Yeah, I mean, something came to my mind, and it's about the domain itself. So I can imagine domains which is, necessary it's necessary to understand the domain itself. Because, if you are building a rocket ship, or if you are building some planes or something, I hope people understand what they are building actually, and they're not just guessing or just, managing their processes, but also seeing the bad signs of a code, of an infrastructure, or, any sign of a smell. But I guess there are the opposite of that as well, right? So if you are building N+1 website, which is, kind of normal or daily habit, I think an experienced engineering manager who can manage the team, and there is seniority in the team. I think it's very important what you mentioned, Fancy. In that case, I think it's fine to have someone who is not so on hand. And I think we didn't mention that by I mean on hand, it's like, writing code, right? Or understand what's in the code, if it's not writing code at all, but it's fine. It can be fine, but understanding the code, sometimes it's necessary. So when we are speaking about on hands, that means that person, that actual manager, it's part of the team, 100%, being on a coding workshop and etc. That's what we mean by that.
Cool.
Yeah, and also, is there anyone from the aviation or the space industry here? Because I think we'd be surprised by the guests.
Yeah,
how much
it's fine.
But I think one other important aspect is that what is the expectation within the company? Because if you are an experienced engineering manager who is not necessarily that hands-on, for example, in a given technology or whatever else, and you go interviewing to a company where it is an expectation that you need to be hands-on, it's probably not going to work out. But if it's not an expectation, so the manager's main role is not to contribute to whatever the team is doing and also manage that team, that's a different cake probably.
I agree with you guys. I also think it's really important to set the expectations and then communicate those clearly. But before we jump to that, how much of an expert should an engineering manager be? I think it's important to always talk about ourselves. So I'm going to ask you guys, how much of an expert did you remain when you were transitioning to leadership positions? And what did you do when you were a line manager?
I'm happy to start this one. So I remember when I was in a team, right? A team of 4. It's a kind of small team. I was like, my daily job was to deliver code, right? Super normal thing. But on some point, I became that lead. Let's call first time it's a tech lead of that team, right? So I was able to operate because my daily challenge was to write code and not bothered by the people around me. By the way, it wasn't the case, but it was very easy to work with the folks there. But one day, I became promoted, or I'm still using it, but I think it's just because of my English. But so I became an engineering manager of that small team, and shortly after I became I became an engineering manager of the second team. And in that time, I just realized, my old habit won't work anymore. So being on hands and leading two different teams in two different areas, it's kind of, overwhelming. And so I had to change my approach there. So on one team, I still, remained an on-hands person for a while, but in the second one, I just delegated that job for the tech lead of that team, right? I think it's convenient to do that way. And also, when I had too many people in a team because we were growing. Hope everyone is fine there. So when we
it's not gonna stop.
Yeah, I mean, I hope they enjoy it. So more and more people joined to the teams. So actually, I became an off-hands engineering manager, right? I wasn't able to write code. So much things happened. I had to be involved in the business part, project management, and process management, and also people management. So that was a short story, and also I think it's a very common one. But I think we usually make one mistake when we are not realizing the environment is changing, and we're still using our not bad, but old habits, which became bad in some point.
Yeah, when I switched to management, usual track, I became the manager of the team where I was actually an engineer before that. And it was happening in a time when we are actually working on some big project. By the way, I led that project, and that was basically my exam whether I'd be worthy of being a manager, even though that was the first role in the company ever. Anyway, when that happened, I was very hands-on, and because it was in the middle of the project, it wasn't like, I dropped everything I was doing yesterday and now I'm a manager, so I need to do different things. And it was a very slow process where I was actually able to learn that I actually need to stop a couple of things, because first of all, I need to provide opportunity for others to, do those things. And second of all, I have a shit ton of things to cover, which I won't have time to cover if I'm working on what I was working on before. So that was the very beginning. And later on, for example, when I joined Bitrise, I was started to working with a company, with a team where, with the exact technology the team was working with, I had no experience at all. And to be honest, the first couple of days were basically taking a lot of notes, and my evenings were Googling stuff and checking out what was that term, because I never heard that and I had to understand it. But my overall take on this, how much hands-on you should be within, for example, an engineering management role, is that I think there's maybe a misconception in some people's head, because hands-on is usually, when you say hands-on, people are thinking about you sit down and write code, you push that code, and that code is being released to production. And of course, it's very hands-on. But altogether, software engineering is not just about writing code. Of course, that's a very important piece of the whole thing. But I try to work in a way that even from the very beginning, when you sit down with the team and you start brainstorming on an idea and trying to figure it out, what is the smallest amount what we can do in a week and we can deliver to the customers, it's also software engineering. When you need to work on, fixing a bug and figuring out what's going on, that's also software engineering. When you have to choose between a couple of possible directions on a technological point of view, it's also software engineering. So my point of view is that it's kind of like a big process, and you can be hands-on in a way that you're not necessarily hands-on with the specific part that you are sitting down and writing code and pushing and releasing to production. But there are lots of things before that, and to be honest, there are lots of things after that some companies try to forget. And you can be very hands-on on those areas as a manager, because, of course, usually software engineers like to focus on that big part of being hands-on and writing code, but there are lots of other things to figure out. So this is how I think about this.
Let me add another short story to that. So currently I mentioned I'm leading a developer experience team, which has some kind of platform responsibility as well in the company. And I came from a different background, so that means I'm not an expert of the infrastructure, right? So I have to rely on many other people in my team, and I'm very lucky because of my they have a very good expertise in the team. So I can rely on that. Although I came from a product engineering direction, so I can add my to many different areas, which is not infra, but it's really correlating to the developer experience what we do.
Awesome. Coming from a completely different perspective, when I was a marketing leader at an IT company, kind of the entire company, or the software engineering part anyway, was part of my team, because I had to get the software engineers to write blog posts on top of their work, working for our clients. So it was hard enough to motivate software engineers to write blog posts for the company blog. But when I got some people to join my team, I could delegate some things to them. And how I worked with my team, the marketing team, was very hands-off. I was a free-range manager, if you please. I gave them specific projects on their own, like deal with social media or deal with our partnerships with different blog posts or whatever. But when it came to the software engineers, I had to remain very hands-on, because I had to keep making sure that their blog posts are actually understandable, and then that they will go and break the internet, because they are going to be so successful. Had I had someone else even join my team, I would have delegated that other project to them as well. So I think it is very context dependent when it comes to your questions about whether or not you should remain hands-on. And going forward, because our time is moving out very fast, when it comes to these days, what are some of your strategies of keeping up to date with technology? Do you go back to the code, or do you do Udemy courses, or what could you share with our audience?
Would you like to?
No? Go ahead if you want.
So I have a couple of techniques, so I'm happy to share. But first, I really wanted to say that if you're coming from outside of the engineering and you became became part or became a leader of that stuff, I think it's very not beneficial, but it's a must just to understand what's the basic of development life cycle. So you have to understand what you are doing there actually. So you can be a super expert in many fields, but you're not understanding your current team's life. It just you won't be successful in that. So, and I think, so there is a basic things. You have to learn what they do. But other than that, it's like there are practice for doing that. So I really recommend to you, all of you, if you are in the choose, to try to sit down with one of your engineer, one of your direct report, and work together for a day. Ask them to, it's like, it can be a huge sacrifice, spending one day on inefficient or not so important stuff, but actually it's very helpful for a long term for yourself, just to see what's the pain point of the engineering, right? If you are not writing code, that's fine. Although you can see that how slow is the local environment you built for the team. That's one thing. Or even if you have some luck and you already wrote some codes, I think it's very good to just cherry picking time to time some of the low hanging fruits or some sidetrack stuff for your backlog and just work on it, because you have to feel what others actually doing, right? I mentioned already that I'm working for improve the developer experience across the company. So it's very important for me just to feel the pain what they experience every day. Because if I just became on fans completely, I just can see and I can prioritize in the right direction. So yeah, I can even recommend one more thing. Participate in or do some exercise with the team. And what does it mean exercising? It's like, if you are an infra team, please do some disaster recovery plans and try to have like a war game and try to break your own system and have the experience. How does it feel? What's the consequences and how to fix that, right? Debugging a live system, it's always useful, even if you are not an on-hands person, because you see that what are the tools, you see some new charts which was completely unknown by you, so you can rely on it for the next time. So these are the tiny pieces which is absolutely makes sense, but I think it's very easy to say no for them because, it's not on my top of 3 priorities at the moment, and it won't be anytime soon. So, so it's a nutshell. Sit down and work together with your reports.
Yeah. Other than the usual stuff like doing a course or reading a book or reading a blog post, which is good, by the way. So right now I'm working with a mobile engineering company, and I'm not a mobile engineer. So when I started working there, I just started an iOS course and made an app. It's not a good app. I wouldn't publish it to the store, but I made an app, and I just learned the basics, the fundamentals. Eventually, software engineering, so it wasn't like I didn't know anything about it, but I learned the special lingo around it, and I learned a lot of things we were actually working actively on. And the other thing I really like is incidents and bugs. Those are the 2 areas I really, really like, because you need to understand a lot of things if you want to participate in resolving an incident, or altogether you want to understand bugs in your system. Because if there is a bug report, first of all, you need to understand the product, how it should work, what was the original idea with that feature or that part which is not working right now. And I think if you have a very deep understanding of how the product you're working on is working, that helps a lot. And what I really like to do is to really understand the product, because I always feel, especially if it's a very technical product, I always feel it's kind of like an extra boost, which is definitely going to help you along the way, if you really know and really understand how the product works. And if you do that, you will understand how the different teams work in the organization, because usually how the product is set up, how the code is built, is usually some kind of a representation of the organization as well. And the same with bugs, and the same with incidents. So I think that's a very, very, very good activity to participate. And the other thing, I think you probably didn't mention that, but the other thing which is definitely good for managers is to, on the activities train you mentioned, is to pair code with others, or if there is a mob session, just join. And you don't necessarily need to, write code, but if you look at what's happening within your team, how they are resolving an issue, how they are, making a decision, how they are solving something, it will definitely help you on remaining on the hands-on track. And again, I'm always going to be a broken record about this one, but it's not just writing code where you need to be hands-on. There are lots of other things you can be very hands-on, and no one will say to you that because you don't understand, I don't know, the given programming language, that you are not worthy to be the manager on that team, I believe.
Okay. I just need to go back to what I said before. Even though I was kind of like a free-range manager, I let the people that I trusted do whatever they wanted as long as they were getting the projects done. I kept a very close eye on how they were. We held one-on-ones, they got feedback, and they got direction when they needed it. So just to make sure that giving a project to a person and then leaving for half a year is not the right track, right? You give the project to a person and you set the definition of success, and then you help them on the way, even though you keep them complete freedom over how they should be doing what they should be doing. And in keeping with your team, I worked as a coach internally at the company. Now I do it externally. So for me, keeping up to date with technology is keeping up to date with myself, because I work with myself, and also keeping up to date with new perspectives and viewpoints and ways of figuring out solutions to problems. So I remember I had been working there as an internal coach for a couple of years, and then I went to a service design course, and I actually graduated as a service design facilitator. And that gave me an entirely new perspective as to how things can be dissected and then put back together. And it gave me a lot of new ideas as to how the team could be assisted when it came to our coaching sessions. So I think it's always nice to maybe leave the company for when you are learning new things, and then bring back the new things that you have learned, and see how you can collaborate in new ways. And I think there is nothing wrong with that, by bringing in external knowledge and turning it over and making it beneficial for the company. And as we are approaching the end of our time, we have come to some conclusions as to how can you tell if you have enough knowledge in the field? There are some things that you should definitely pay attention to, as we have mentioned. Set clear expectations and communicate what you are capable of doing and what your team should expect you doing within the team. If you are not a technologist, and even if you are a technologist and came to lead a team, please let them take responsibility for their work, right? If an IC is doing a specific thing and they code and they are, building a specific part of the product, don't take over their work. Let them take full responsibility for what they are doing and help them and guide them along the way. As a leader, you should always keep track of the big picture, right? You should lead the team. You should say what the North Star is. You should make sure that they know where they are going, and you should be the one who helps them understand the bigger idea of the company. Like, how is your project or your piece of code helping the entire company succeed and forward itself? And also, let your team members also have a say. As a leader, you are not just responsible for making and breaking salary decisions, you are also responsible for making them feel heard within the company, so that individual contributors who don't want managerial positions but want their voice heard aren't put into managerial positions, right? This happens a lot when people want to take responsibility for what they deliver but don't feel like they have a say. They will move into managerial positions because they didn't have a say otherwise. So as a manager, you are kind of tasked with the task of making sure that they have a voice. Is there anything else that you would like to add to this list?
Yeah, I mean, how I summarize the takeaway what I'm wanting to share today is like, it doesn't matter if you came outside of the engineering or you were a previous engineer, but I think you have to state that clearly, what the team can expect from you, right? If you have to know your strengths, and you have to share that with the team. And also, if you have a blind spot, please let them know, right? It's much more easier, because if they know that you cannot, they can't trust in you to check their codes for whatever reasons, they have to know that, right? So keep it super simple. It's not a big deal if you are not familiar with the things, right? I'm sure a lot of engineers are, have very great toolkit, and that can be useful still, even if they cannot code. So be super clear what can they expect from you. I think it's very, very handy, and build for that, right? If you have lack of expertise on some field, catch someone or hire someone, or try, there are a lot of practice how to shuffle some teams or get some knowledge outside or inside from the company. But first, the main thing is like you have to act on it. So if there is no one who has expertise on a team on that domain or that field, it just won't work even if you are a good manager. So the conclusion from my point is like, it really depends on the domain. Is that you can be successful or not. You have to name what's your strengths, what's your weakness, and try to set up an environment around you to be able to be successful in a long term. So and please, if you are building, spaceship, find someone who can do that. Yeah,
interesting angle. Yeah, I have two things to add. The first is just a small fun thing. If you're not watching, I suggest you to watch Ted Lasso, the TV show, which is about a US football coach who is traveling to the UK to coach a UK soccer team. And I think it's the perfect analogy for this, because he's not completely unaware of the things. He's aware of how to coach a sports team, but he's completely clueless about soccer and the rules and all the things there. And still, I didn't finish it so far, so I'm not sure what will happen. But so far, it seems like he's able to manage the team. That's just a fun thing. The other thing I wanted to add is another story, actually. I recently started to work together as a manager of one of the teams. And it's a tricky situation because back in history, the team once had a manager who was very hands-on, was able to set up the strategy for the team, also was able to contribute to whatever the team was working on. Then there was a switch and the team started to work together with someone who wasn't necessarily hands-on, but really wanted to tell the team what to do and what should they do and how should they do that. And based on some feedback and conversations, it wasn't the best, couple of months for the team. And then I came into the picture, and to be honest, again, I was somewhat clueless on what they are exactly doing. I'm not saying completely clueless because I was somewhat, understanding the idea and understanding the ownership what they had, but it wasn't necessarily strictly software engineering. It was a different kind of team. And what I told them in the very first day that, hey, I can help you with two things: setting the direction, where do you want to get, and the second is making sure that no blockers, no obstacles will be on your road when you are going to push towards that road. Anything else, probably I won't be the person you can go for help and I can answer your questions. And by the way, what I realized based on feedback from the organization and what I see on the team's performance, they are thriving. They're an amazing team. And you know why? Because I just let them be. I'm not going there all the time and telling them how to do. Of course, if there is an obstacle, I'm very much there and I'm trying to understand everything they are doing. But I'm not trying to, go there and tell them, you should do this, you should do that. They are expert on that field. They're definitely better than me on that field. I can help them as a manager who supports their road towards that goal, what we set up together. So, yeah, maybe that's the other thing I would have added.
Thank you. So the answer to the question, should a line manager be an always up-to-date expert in the field? It depends. It depends on the size of the team. It depends on the expertise of the team. And it depends on what the project at hand is. But really, can you be a good manager if you have no technical expertise? Yes, if you make an effort to understand the domain, to understand the processes, to understand the team, to become familiar with the company, so you can point the people to the right direction. Can someone be a good engineering manager if they haven't seen any code in production in years? Yes, but also don't project yourself to the team as someone who is also technical and don't let them make decisions because you haven't seen any production code in years. So state your limitations, know your limitations first, state your limitations and make sure that you're transparent and honest with the team with whom you work with, and make sure that they have the necessary empowerment to make decisions when you are not the best person to make those decisions. And I think with that, we are kind of ready to conclude our conversation today. Please take away that anyone can be anything if they really make the effort to put the work in. And don't dismiss your line manager if they have never coded a line in their life just because. Make sure that you get to know them first, and if they still unworthy of your respect, then then it's up to you what to do. Yes.
If no, then run.
Yes. And also be aware of your own skill set, your strengths, your weaknesses, and make sure that you can work together and create a better team than just the individuals by themselves. And so with that said, we thank you for coming to the first ever live stream English language recording of the Leadership Anonymous or Anonim Vezető Klubja. If you enjoyed this episode, like, share, and subscribe. And also rate us up to a 5-star review on your favorite podcast channel. And we have a newly established YouTube channel through which our people are hopefully able to be watching right now. We have a Slack community. You are also free to join that. Usually we speak in Hungarian, but we are happy to switch if you decide to join. And thanks for joining us and staying with us. And like, share, subscribe.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Round of applause. Thank you. There are still a couple of questions, though, so we're not quite done yet. We have time for one or two questions. And how amazing.
Want to sit down next to me?
Yeah, I'll be honored to. How great to join you guys. Can we just see the question? Yes, here we are. Amazing, guys. A couple questions came in. Let's start with the first one. This is so that fancy you don't have to ask all the questions. Here's one coming up. What would you advise to a young professional who wants to become a line manager early in their career? Are soft skills more important than job-related ones?
Oh my God, soft skills are job-related skills, guys. Whoever asked that question. I am sure you meant technical, but I just want to put that out there.
I love your answer as a soft skills trainer. Thank you.
Let me have another one because I feel like if you head right into the managerial track, you might miss something that might be useful for your long career. So, but also if you head into and you became a manager too early, let's say, or as a young one, I think there is a way to come back to the other track and be once again a on-hands engineer for a while. Switching between the two branches, I think it's kind of normal, or at least it should be.
It's the pendulum.
I just wanted to drop that our previous episode, which was in Hungarian and was in a meetup, was actually about help me, I became a manager, what to do. So I definitely recommend if you speak Hungarian to check out that episode. The other thing is soft skills are one of my favorite topics because first of all, we call them soft skills, but they are very hard, especially hard to learn. Compared to coding, for example, where you can basically for $10 buy some course and try out anything and then you can just, be on your own and do things. It's pretty hard to, for example, how to give feedback, how to receive feedback, all the other soft skills part. It's really, really hard, especially if you're not necessarily the best in it. And I think what I would suggest is, of course, it depends on the company, depends on the team, depends on what do you want, what is your area, whether you're talking about engineering management or whatever else. But what I suggest is to invest a lot of energy into soft skills because whatever the role you're working in, it eventually will pay you out very much. So, and as I heard, we have a soft skill trainer here, so it's definitely a good idea. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's more important than the job-related skills because that is the part which depends on the team, the company, and everything else. But I think you can never do a wrong bet if you are putting an effort in soft skills.
And if you don't speak Hungarian, learn Hungarian and then check out this.
That's the very good advice.
All right, 2 more questions. Let's do a lightning round, guys, okay?
Yep.
And we are
First
also
one.
going to stay here, so if you want to make friends
Oh,
with
yeah.
us,
After that, you guys can discuss as well. Let's do the lightning round. What would you suggest to someone who becomes a manager and realizes they missed their previous technical job as they liked it more than the managerial job?
I would say stay within the company if you like the company, but go to a different team if you want to, again, become someone who just writes code.
Yeah, it's a story of mine, right? So just go back and do some technical stuff, right? I mean, yeah, if it's not possible in your current place, it's that sucks. But otherwise, I mean, it's not a degradation, right? One day you was a manager and you became an engineer. It's not something it's backward or something. I think it's kind of normal, and I think it's very well recommended.
It's not a promotion and it's not a demotion. It's a parallel track. It's a switch. If you don't enjoy it, just switch back. I highly recommend Charity Major's blog. There is an article we're going to add it to the show notes, which is about if she's suggesting that if you're an engineering manager, in a couple of years, you should go back for maybe 1 year to just be a software engineer. And if you're not enjoying what you're doing, just go back and do what you're enjoying because it's going to be better.
All right. 60-second round, which means 20 seconds per person. All right, guys? So to the point. How do I keep my expertise and stay up to date on my profession after becoming a line manager? You kind of touched upon this as well, but now you have 20 seconds each to say something else.
Green out your GitHub repository and just do side projects if you want on the weekends, whenever. And that will keep you up to date.
Yeah, I have kind of the same answer what I already shared. Catch up with your team, right? Just they already have the expertise. Day by day, they have to invest more because that's their responsibility currently. But you can be part of it. So join them for a day, join from them for an hour, just to see some code. That's a very easy way to do. It's not a sacrifice for their side. You're just joining them. Yeah, the first hour can be awkward, but the second hour will be smooth, hopefully.
online meetups, blogs, conferences, books, incidents, bugs, understand the product, pair coding, mobbing. That's just 9. Plenty of things for the next couple of months, and I think it works well.
Well, within 20 seconds. Well done. All right, round of applause to Fancy, Meffy, and Kispocok. Thank you so much for being here with us. And as they mentioned, feel free to attack them with your questions. They would be happy to have a discussion with you guys. A couple information, very important. We'd love your feedback. Please give feedback about the event. At 6 p.m., there's going to be a networking party with the DJ, and you have 4 drink coupons. So have fun, but don't go too wild, because we'd love to see you tomorrow as well. I'm Peter Hoidu. I'm out. See you tomorrow. Have fun.